No trespassing. The No Trespassing sign was old and weathered, its red letters faded, clawed by time and the relentless grasp of ivy. It stood at the entrance to Hollow Creek Woods, where the trees were gnarled and blackened, their twisted branches stretching toward the sky like skeletal fingers. The locals spoke in hushed tones about these woods, warning outsiders to stay away. "People go in, but they don't come out," the bartender at Miller's Tavern had muttered to Ethan and Amara the night before. Ethan had laughed it off. Urban legends didn't scare him. Amara, however, wasn't so sure. Now, as they stood before the sign, a thick fog creeping between the trees, she hesitated. "Ethan, maybe we shouldn't." "Come on, Amara," Ethan said, flashing his usual reckless grin. "It's just a bunch of trees. We'll be in and out before dark." Amara sighed, but followed. The crunch of leaves underfoot filled the silence as they ventured deeper. The air was damp, heavy with the scent of decaying wood and something metallic like rust or blood. They walked for what felt like hours. The deeper they went, the more unnatural the forest felt. The trees leaned inward as if whispering secrets. Then they found the cabin. It sat in a clearing, its wooden walls blackened with age, the windows shattered. A faint flicker of movement inside made Amara grab Ethan's arm. "Did you see that?" she whispered. Ethan shook his head but stepped closer. "Probably just an animal." Amara's gut twisted. "Then why is there a light on?" Ethan ignored her and stepped onto the porch. The wood groaned beneath his weight. A tattered curtain fluttered inside, as if something had moved past it. Then they heard it. A woman's voice, soft and pleading. "Help me." Amara's breath hitched. "We need to go." But Ethan had already pushed the door open. The inside was eerily clean, untouched by time. A wooden table stood in the center of the room, with a single chair beside it. A tape recorder sat atop the table, playing the same desperate plea. "Help me, please." Amara's skin prickled. "Ethan, this isn't right." Then, the floor creaked behind them. They turned just as the door slammed shut on its own. The room darkened. The wall seemed to shift, warping and breathing. A putrid stench filled the air, like rotting meat. Amara's stomach lurched. Then, a whisper drifted through the air. Not from the recorder. "You shouldn't be here." Ethan grabbed Amara's hand, yanking her toward the door, but the handle wouldn't budge. Something moved in the shadows. A figure emerged from the darkness, a woman, her skin gray and waxy, eyes sunken, lips split. Her dress was torn, stained with something dark. Her fingers twitched unnaturally. Ethan took a step back, pulling Amara with him. "Who are you?" he managed to choke out. The woman lifted a trembling hand and pointed behind them. Slowly, Amara turned. The tape recorder was gone. In its place was something far worse. A photograph, old and yellowed, of two bodies lying in the dirt, their faces contorted in agony. Ethan and Amara's faces. Amara's scream caught in her throat. Her legs trembled. "What the hell is this?" The woman's whisper grew softer. "You must leave, before he comes back." A loud bang echoed from the back of the cabin. The woman's head snapped toward the noise. Her face twisted in terror. "Run!" The door flew open. Amara didn't need to be told twice. She grabbed Ethan's arm and bolted. The woods were darker now, the trees closer. The branches seemed to claw at them, snagging their clothes. A heavy presence loomed behind them, something fast and inhuman. They ran until the No Trespassing sign came into view. But before they could reach it, Ethan tripped. Amara turned, gasping. "Ethan." His eyes were wide, his face pale. I can't move." Something unseen held him down. The air around him shimmered, warping like heat waves. Then, out of the darkness, a hand, long skeletal, fingers curled like talons, gripped his ankle and dragged him back. Ethan screamed. Amara lunged forward, grabbing his hands, pulling with all her strength. No, the unseen force was too strong. Ethan's fingers slipped through hers. His scream cut off abruptly. Then, nothing. The forest was silent. Amara fell to her knees, gasping, tears streaking her face. Ethan. There was no trace of him. No footprints. No sign he had ever existed. Only the no trespassing sign, now splattered with fresh red streaks. And beneath it, carved into the wood, a new message. You were warned. Amara's breath came in short, panicked gasps. The world around her spun, the trees blurring into twisted shadows. Ethan was gone. Not dead. Not missing. Gone. As if he had never existed. Her shaking hands touched the sign. The red streaks were still wet. Blood. Ethan's blood. You were warned. A chilling wind whispered through the trees, carrying a faint, distorted voice, Ethan's voice. Amara. She jerked up. Ethan? Her voice echoed, swallowed instantly by the dense fog curling around the trees. Silence. Then, a footstep behind her. She spun, heart pounding. Nothing but trees. Another footstep. Closer. Her instincts screamed at her to run, but her legs felt cemented to the ground. Then, fingers brushed her shoulder. Amara screamed and bolted, crashing through the underbrush. The branches tore at her skin. Her lungs burned, but she didn't stop. She needed to get out. Now, the sign loomed ahead. Just a few more steps. Something grabbed her ankle. She tripped, hitting the ground hard. A cold grip clamped around her leg, pulling her backward. Amara kicked wildly, twisting to see nothing. But the grip was still there, unseen fingers digging into her skin. Let me go, she shrieked, clawing at the dirt. Suddenly, the pressure vanished. Gasping, Amara scrambled to her feet and ran. She tore through the woods, bursting onto the main road. The no trespassing sign stood behind her, motionless. The forest was quiet. Too quiet. She ran all the way back to town. Nobody remembers Miller's Tavern was warm, filled with laughter and chatter, but Amara felt frozen. She stumbled inside, her hair tangled, hands shaking. The bartender looked up. Miss, you all right? Ethan, she gasped, gripping the counter. He's gone. Something took him in the woods. The bartender frowned. Ethan? My friend. Ethan. We went into the woods, and she stopped. The bartender's blank expression made her stomach twist. You came in alone, he said. Amara's heart dropped. No, I didn't. We were here last night. You warned us about Hollow Creek. The bartender shook his head. Miss, I don't know what you're talking about. She turned desperately to the other patrons. Please. Someone must remember him. Blank stares. Amara felt the blood drain from her face. It was as if Ethan had never existed. Then, the TV above the bar crackled. Static flickered before an old, grainy news broadcast appeared. A black and white photo. 2 missing people. Her own face stared back at her. And next to her, Ethan. The bartender followed her gaze and went pale. What the hell? The broadcast continued. Authorities are still investigating the disappearance of Amara Cole and Ethan Blake, last seen near Hollow Creek Woods. Locals warn against trespassing, as several others have vanished over the years. Amara's blood ran cold. Her own missing persons case was playing live. She took a shaky step back. The bar flickered like an old film reel. The voices warped. The air around her shimmered, just like when Ethan was taken. A shadow moved behind her. A whisper brushed her ear. You shouldn't be here. The world lurched, and everything went dark. Trapped Amara's eyes fluttered open. The air was damp, cold. She was lying on the floor of the cabin. The table, the chair, the tape recorder. She shot up, chest heaving. No, 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 no. She had escaped, hadn't she? The door was closed. The windows were boarded up. And then a familiar voice from the recorder. Help me, please. Her own voice. Amara's throat clenched. This was how it started. The cycle. The trap. Then, outside, she heard it. Footsteps. Someone approaching the cabin. A new voice. A man's voice. Did you see that? A second voice, a woman's. Ethan, maybe we shouldn't. Amara's stomach dropped. She stumbled to the window, peering through a small crack. Two figures stood outside. A young man and a young woman. Another Ethan. Another Amara. No, not them. New victims. The door creaked open. Amara turned and saw herself standing in the shadows. A broken, trapped version of herself. She opened her mouth, but the only words that came out were, "You shouldn't be here." The door slammed shut. The cycle continued. No Trespassing 2. The Forsaken Loop. The door slammed shut. Amara stood frozen, staring at the young couple who had just stepped inside the cursed cabin. She had tried to warn them, just like the ghostly woman had once tried to warn her. But it didn't matter. The loop always continued. She wasn't Amara anymore. She was something else, something trapped in the cabin, forced to repeat the same words, to watch the same events unfold. And soon, the young woman before her would take her place. The girl's eyes widened as she met Amara's hollow gaze. "Ethan," the girl whispered, gripping her companion's arm. "Something's wrong. We need to go." Ethan frowned, stepping forward. "Who are you?" Amara felt her lips move against her will. "You shouldn't be here." She wanted to scream, to beg them to run, but the words wouldn't come. The cabin had stolen her voice. The tape recorder crackled to life. "Help me, please." The girl paled. "Ethan, that's my voice." Ethan's brow furrowed. "What?" "That's impossible." It had begun. The first sign that they were already trapped. Amara clenched her fists, trying to fight the force holding her in place. If she could break free, just this once, maybe she could stop it. But the cabin wouldn't let her. A low creaking echoed from the far end of the room. The back door. He was coming. Amara turned sharply. The shadows shifted, writhing. The thing that had taken Ethan last time was stirring. The girl grabbed Ethan's arm. "We need to leave. Now." Ethan hesitated. Amara wanted to grab him, to shove him toward the door, but she couldn't move. She was a puppet in the cabin's cruel game. Then, the thing stepped forward. A man, or something that used to be a man, emerged from the darkness. His skin was stretched too tight, his mouth permanently frozen in a grotesque grin. His eyes were black voids, swirling with something ancient. His voice was a low hiss. "You trespassed." The girl screamed. Ethan lunged for the door, but it slammed shut before he could reach it. The thing moved too fast, closing the distance in a blink. Long claw-like fingers wrapped around Ethan's wrist. "No," the girl cried, grabbing his other hand. Ethan's face contorted in pain. "Amara, help." His voice, it wasn't just his. It was Ethan's voice from before. The Ethan she had lost. Amara's head snapped up. The loop wasn't just repeating. It was layering. Every Ethan, every Amara, every soul lost in this cabin was still here, buried beneath the surface. forced to relive their horror over and over again. She had to break it. She had to fight. Summoning all her strength, Amara lunged forward. The invisible force gripping her snapped, and she crashed into the creature, forcing it back. Ethan fell to the floor, gasping. The thing snarled, its mouth stretching wider. It turned its hollow gaze on her. "You do not belong here anymore." Amara took a step forward, heart pounding. "Neither do you." The creature laughed. The walls of the cabin trembled. "You cannot stop this." The shadows writhed, reaching for her, for the girl, for Ethan. Amara gritted her teeth. "Watch me." She grabbed the tape recorder from the table and smashed it against the floor. A deafening scream erupted from the cabin. The walls shook, the wood splitting apart. The creature howled, its form distorting. For the first time, the loop fractured. Amara turned to Ethan and the girl. "Run." They bolted for the door. This time, it didn't close. They crashed through, stumbling into the forest. The trees were shifting, the air warping like heat waves. The loop was collapsing. Amara pushed forward, dragging Ethan and the girl with her. The no trespassing sign was just ahead, barely visible through the swirling mist. They had almost reached it when a cold hand gripped Amara's arm. She whirled around. It was him, the original Ethan, the one she had lost. His face was twisted in pain, his eyes desperate. "Amara, help me." Her heart clenched. She had a choice: escape or try to save him. Ethan's grip tightened. "Please, don't leave me here." Tears blurred her vision. The cabin groaned, the world around them crumbling. If she stayed, she'd be trapped again. But if she left, Ethan would be lost forever. The girl screamed, "Amara, come on." Amara looked at the Ethan before her, the one still alive, the one she had just saved. Then back at the other Ethan, the one who had already been claimed. Her breath hitched. "I'm sorry." She yanked her arm free and ran. The moment she crossed the no trespassing sign, the world shattered. The aftermath, Amara collapsed onto the road, gasping for air. Ethan and the girl lay beside her, panting. The forest was silent. No sign of the cabin. No sign of the thing that had tried to take them. It was over. Ethan looked at her, wide-eyed. "What the hell just happened?" Amara didn't answer. Instead, she turned back toward the woods. The no trespassing sign still stood, but the blood was gone. The words were faded, as if no one had touched them in years. A slow chill crept down her spine. Had she really broken the loop? Or had she just reset it? Then a whisper drifted through the air. Soft. Familiar. "You shouldn't be here." Amara's breath caught. She knew that voice. It was hers. The wind rustled the trees, and for the briefest moment, she swore she saw something standing just beyond the tree line. A figure with her face. Watching. Waiting. Amara took a shaky step back. Then she turned and walked away, never looking back. The end. No Trespassing 3. The final warning. Amara never spoke about what happened in Hollow Creek Woods. Not to Ethan. The final warning. Amara never spoke about what happened in Hollow Creek Woods. Not to Ethan. Not to the authorities. Not to anyone. She should have been grateful to be alive, but she couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't over. Because every time she closed her eyes, she saw it. Her own face. Watching from the trees. 1 year later, the nightmares never stopped. Neither did the whispers. "You shouldn't be here." At first, Amara convinced herself it was paranoia. Trauma. A mind playing tricks after surviving something unexplainable. But then, Ethan vanished. He had been fine the night before. They had dinner. talked about finally moving past Hollow Creek. But when Amara woke up the next morning, his bed was empty, his car still in the driveway, his phone on the nightstand. No forced entry, no struggle, just gone, just like before. Panic clawed at her chest. She called the police, but deep down, she already knew. The forest had taken him back. The return to Hollow Creek. Amara stood at the entrance to Hollow Creek Woods, staring at the No Trespassing sign. She had vowed never to return, but this wasn't about her anymore. She stepped past the sign. The air felt wrong, too still, too cold. The trees seemed to lean inward, as if the forest recognized her. Then, a voice, soft, familiar. "Help me, please." Amara's breath hitched. "Ethan." She ran, branches clawing at her arms, shadows twisting at the edges of her vision. Then, the cabin appeared, exactly as it had before. Amara's stomach churned. It was waiting for her. She pushed the door open. Inside, the tape recorder sat on the table, just as she remembered. The air was thick, suffocating. And then, she saw him. Ethan stood in the corner, facing the wall, unmoving. "Ethan." Amara rushed forward, grabbing his arm. "We're leaving now." Slowly, he turned. Amara's breath caught. His eyes weren't his anymore. They were black voids, swirling with something ancient. His lips curled into a too-wide grin. "You shouldn't be here," he whispered. Amara stumbled back, horror slamming into her chest. No, 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 no. The shadows around Ethan shifted, breaking apart. Another Ethan. And another. And another. Layer upon layer of all the Ethans who had ever been trapped here. Dozens. Hundreds. Lost souls piled on top of each other. And in the center, herself. The other Amara stepped forward, identical in every way except for the emptiness in her eyes. "You didn't escape," the doppelganger whispered. "You just bought time." The realization hit Amara like a thunderbolt. She had never broken the loop. She had only delayed it. It always came back for the ones who left. And now, it wanted her. The doppelganger tilted its head. "You have two choices." The shadows swirled, the walls trembling. "Stay," the other Amara whispered, "and take my place. Or run, and let it take someone else in your name." The weight of the choice crushed her. If she left, someone else would be pulled in. Another girl. Another Ethan. The cycle would continue. But if she stayed, it would end. Her pulse pounded. Ethan's voice, his real voice, broke through the chaos. "Amara." His blackened eyes flickered like something was fighting to surface. "Don't let it win." Tears burned her eyes. She had one chance. The doppelganger reached for her. "Choose." Amara grabbed the tape recorder and smashed it one last time. The cabin erupted. A deafening scream filled the air, the walls collapsing, the darkness unraveling. Amara threw herself at Ethan, dragging him toward the door. The forest shrieked, trying to hold them in. She ran faster. Faster. The no trespassing sign was just ahead. She crossed it, and everything went white. One final warning. Amara woke up in the middle of the road, gasping. Ethan was beside her, unconscious but breathing. The forest was silent. No sign of the cabin. No sign of the other Amara. She had done it. She had broken the loop. Or so she thought. Because when she turned her head, the no trespassing sign had changed. The words had been replaced. A new warning. A name. Her name.